think we've probably had enough time for everybody to participate who wants to participate. Can we show the results now or should we wait, team?
I'd say show the results now. Let's see where
Okay.
it is.
Yeah, if we can do that. Okay, so it looks like we have 48% who have answered that they've had one meeting, and then somewhat of an understanding of the purpose of advisory councils, 52%. Somewhat, looks like most of the answers are somewhat of an understanding and somewhat familiar with the requirements of council membership. And then how comfortable are you at conducting an effective advisory council meeting? So 44% there. So hopefully during our presentation today, and we do our exit poll, those numbers will increase. Hopefully you'll become more and more comfortable. And that again will just take some time and will take some experience in actually getting there and doing advisory council meetings. So if we want to roll on over to the next slide, please. I do want to just point out that we are in section 3 of your manual. You'll notice that we did not include the advisory council PowerPoint because we were developing this right up to print time. So when we are finished today, if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint, if you would just let Greg or Melissa know, or your RPM, we can make sure that you get a copy of it. But our session today is really broken up into 4 sections, and those are our objectives for today. So we hope when we're finished today, you're going to have a better understanding of why advisory council meetings are important or why advisory councils are important. We hope that you will know all the required elements of your advisory council bylaws, and you will learn more specifics about those bylaws and how they can help you do your work. We also hope that you have a better understanding about the rules of membership and that you're able to look at those ratio requirements and get the best people as members of your council as possible. And then lastly, we hope that you will understand how meetings should be conducted and be able to ask some questions maybe about effective meetings and how you can tweak your meetings so that they are as effective as possible. So if we want to advance to the next slide. So if we could just hear from you all about what you believe the purpose of your advisory council meeting is, or your advisory council. If you want to just put down in the chat just a couple of words, one word of just in general, what is the purpose of the advisory council? Let us hear from you. Decision making. Anybody else?
Planning.
Planning, good. Yeah, you can just holler it out if you want.
Accountability.
Okay. Thanks, Betty.
Mm-hmm. Making sure we're up to date, keeping us honest, and transparency. Collaboration. To advise and plan components of the program. Got some great new coordinators here. Stakeholder involvement.
Good.
Uniting everyone.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, it sounds like we don't even need to do this training. You all have a great start on the purpose of advisory councils anyway, but we will move on. If you want to advance to the next slide. So just in general, you all were right on target. All of those were excellent responses as to the purpose of the advisory council. And just in a nutshell, advisory councils are to provide the center coordinator with input, guidance, and recommendations for running the center. Just as the name implies, it's an advisory council. The council gives you advice. They give you input. They help you make decisions. And also, it's required that you get this advice and this guidance from a variety of stakeholders. And you'll find later in the training, and you may already know this, that you are required to have a variety of stakeholders. You want input from your parents, school staff, and your community, and in some situations from your students. So if we want to proceed. So along with those general purposes, the Advisory Council also has some specific purposes, such as approving budget amendments, reviewing your needs assessments, and helping you make decisions about what services and programs need to be offered to your students and your families. Anytime that you develop your continuation program plan, or your action plan, as some of us call it, the Advisory Council should be involved in that with updates or amendments, and then on the front end of even developing those action plans. And then also the Advisory Council should be involved in the evaluation of all the activities to make sure and to help you decide if you're on the right track with the programs and services you're providing. So the Advisory Council should have a say, and they should help you in that evaluation. And then you will do an implementation report at the end of the year, and your Advisory Council should be a part of that. You should report those things out to the Advisory Council, and they should help you review that. And then one of the most important things also is that the Advisory Council should have a shared role in the hiring of the coordinator. They should be on the team with the school to help interview and to have a meaningful role in the selection of the coordinator for a center. We could proceed. So we're just going to take a little quick quiz, just as far as the purpose or responsibility of the Advisory Council. Which one of these do you believe is not the responsibility of the Advisory Council? Evaluation of activities for achievement of outcomes and program effectiveness, conduct performance evaluations on the center coordinator and possibly recommend termination if needed, promote the center to the community, or to review and approve budget amendments. B. Yes, you are so smart. Easy little quiz. Thank you. It's B. The Advisory Council is there to provide advice and recommendations, but they are not there to evaluate center staff or the center coordinator. They're there as partners in the work to help the coordinator do the job of the center. Okay, we want to proceed. All right, so the next up is the Advisory Council bylaws. And I believe that is Sherrie Martin.
And I just want to warn you, this section is going to be so exciting, you'll just barely be able to sit still in your seat, because we're talking about bylaws, right? The most exciting topic you can think of. Okay. So your Center Advisory Council must adopt a set of bylaws which govern your council, and it keeps your center and your council on track. So the bylaws are something that you and your Advisory Council come up with together. This is not something you write and it's done, or that the Advisory Council does on their own and it's done. It's something that you all do together. Next slide, please. So why do we need Advisory Council bylaws? Two reasons. The bylaws provide guidance for council operations, and they also provide guidance for certain center operations. So in terms of council operations, it gives you and the Advisory Council a framework of structure under which the council operates. It gives authority, and it guides you all into how things will be done through the council at Advisory Council meetings. So bylaws give guidance on membership, which helps you keep a fair and balanced Advisory Council. The bylaws give you guidance on how your meetings are conducted so that your meetings will stay orderly and be professional. And your bylaws also provide guidance for our council functions. And we know one of the most important function of an Advisory Council is helping to make decisions on voting on certain things, on center activities, on center staffing patterns, on center center location, on programming and spending. So next, in addition to providing guidelines on council operations, the bylaws also provide guidelines on certain center operations. So why would some center operations be in your advisory council bylaws? Because we want the advisory council to be involved in these two things. So the two center operations pieces that we want the advisory council to be heavily involved in, along with everything else, but to be in the bylaws and to be documented as such, are, like Barbara said, hiring new coordinators. When it's time to hire a new coordinator, your superintendent has signed a contract with the cabinet that says, yes, we'll agree that the Center Advisory Council will have a direct, and this is from quote from the contract, a direct and shared role in the hiring of the center coordinator. So the other center operations that the Advisory Council has input in and is documented in the bylaws are spending practices of the center. So spending practices are in the bylaws. You're required to have some, excuse me, should have had my phone turned off. In the bylaws, you're required to have advisory council narratives about 4 spending areas of the center. Welfare, basic needs, and emergency assistance, that's all one thing. Spending for food, spending for incentives, rewards, and recognitions, that's also one thing. And also, what the advisory council feels is appropriate spending for travel costs for folks that are not center staff. This would include students and parents. And so moving on up. So why do we want the advisory council to help you set those criteria and limits? Why do we want to have them? They actually, these narratives actually provide some backup to you in some difficult situations and when you're making some decisions about spending. For example, your principal wants you to purchase trophies for all students for field day for $1,200. Well, in your bylaws, you will have decided, or before that, you will have decided in what situations would you purchase incentives and rewards and recognitions from center funds, and also what the maximum limits are. So that gives you some backup. If a family can't understand that why you can't help them with their electric bill, again, your advisory council spending limit narratives gives you some backup on that, because you will have in there some criteria and limits on spending in that area. And you can say, I can't do this because my bylaws say, etc., etc. So let's take a closer look. On this slide is a closer look at those 4 spending areas and what we mean by criteria and limits. So for when you're spending money or want to spend funds on what we call welfare, basic needs, emergency assistance for students or families, in your bylaws, you must have 3 things. 1, what kinds of assistance does your center want to offer? It could be clothing, food, shoes. It could be clothing, food, shoes, medicine, utilities. So these are things that you and your advisory council decide together. Another thing you have to have under welfare, basic needs, emergency assistance are 2 types of spending limits. One is a spending limit per student or per family for the year, and another is a total annual spending limit, how much your center will spend in that welfare, basic needs, emergency assistance category. So having that spending limit per student per family for a year, like the example before, would give you backup for that family who doesn't understand why you can't pay their electric bill again, because you've already met that limit with them. So you could help them find other resources. So in the category of food, criteria means For which activities will you be buying food? In what circumstances? And then you need a dollar limit, a total spending limit on food for the year. The third category, incentives, rewards, and recognitions. Again, criteria. What activities will require funds for these things? What type of incentives and rewards? Also, an annual spending limit for these things. It says food, but under number 3, but it should say incentives and rewards and recognition. Sorry, that was my typo. The fourth category is guidelines that your advisory council helps you develop for spending on travel for other than center staff. In what circumstances? Be travel for who? Students, maybe Frisk sponsored field trips, YSC sponsored college visits, FRC sponsored trips to a local museum, or is it travel transportation for parents, bus, what do you call them, cab vouchers, or bus tokens, or other types of travel or transportation that you might provide for parents to get to school functions or critical appointments. And also, that's the criteria. So of course, you need a dollar limit as well. So that's your total annual spending limit on travel for non-center staff. Let me point out that in these 4 categories, your spending limits would be for any munis code, where you're spending on food, welfare, incentives, or travel. For example, in the welfare category, you might be purchasing food for a family because they've come to you at 3:30 on Friday and said, well, we don't have any food for the weekend. So food pantries are closed. You are it. So you provide, or you go out and you purchase some food for them. It might be out of your welfare code. It's still food. So it's a little tricky. So your RPM can always help you with those kinds of things. But it is spending for those things in whatever code it happens to be in. Next slide, please. So these are the basic highlighted things that your advisory council bylaws must have in them. There are some other things. We have an advisory council bylaws checklist. It is actually in your new coordinator's binder. And at some point with your advisory council, you'll want to check and make sure all those things are in there, and that you want to see if your advisory council wants to make some changes or updates to them. Something that you want to do about every other year, well, at the minimum. So membership. You have to have guidelines in there for membership. How do you remove inactive members? How do you add new members? Who selects them? And officers. What kinds of officers will you have? Will you have just a chairperson? Will you have a chairperson and secretary? And how long will they serve? You have to have bylaws in your bylaws about meetings. How will your meetings be operated? How will they be run? So most centers usually say they go with Robert's Rules of Order, which any parliamentary procedure, but can be complex or it can be casual. Most advisory councils operate in a more casual way with Robert's Rules of Order and that kind of procedure for a meeting. So I think we'll be talking about that a little later. And of course, the center expenditure guidelines, those 4 categories we just talked about, and advisory council involvement in hiring a new coordinator. Which members will be involved in the hiring? What kind of little hiring committee will the advisory council participate in? Will they be screening applicants? Will they be on the interviewing committee? Will they do both? Those are outlined in your bylaws. And then there are things written into your bylaws about the bylaws themselves. How will the council do amendments? when your bylaws are being changed, updated, amended, what is the process for that? And also for regular reviews of your advisory council bylaws. And you want to make sure that you do that, like I said, at a minimum of every other year. And note that in your bylaws. So I know this is just fascinating stuff. So we have a little quiz for you on the next slide. Okay, first one. So in your chat, somebody just speak out and say, what's missing in this narrative? So this is a fake narrative in somebody's advisory council bylaws in the spending section under welfare, basic needs, emergency assistance. So after exhausting community resources, this is what's written in the bylaws. This Blue Mountain FRC may use Frisk funds to assist students and families with clothing, shoes, medicine, food, and or temporary shelter not to exceed $1,000 for the year. What is missing from this narrative, the spending narrative? Can anybody say? So you have to remember, you have to have spending limit per, okay, thank you, Molly, per spending limit, per student, and per family. So you're exactly right. Exactly right. So we have an annual spending limit, and but we need a per student, per family spending limit, and we need one more thing for this narrative. Oh, no, we don't. I'm sorry. We do have, I was going to say criteria, but we already have that in there, right? The criteria is the Frisk can assist with clothing, shoes, medicine, food, and shelter. Okay. And the answer is needs a per student or per family limit for a year. Okay, let's do the next one. So this is a narrative that says that Frisk funds can be used to transport students for field trips and to provide public transportation for parents to attend important appointments. What is missing? What is missing from this narrative? We have a criteria here. They can provide transportation for students, for field trips, and for parents, for parent-teacher conferences and school events. We are missing an annual. Pull that up, Melissa, the answer.
You say the amount of money or the dollar amount?
Yeah, we need a total spending limit. So we have the criteria. That's right. Thanks, Dustin. You got it. But we also need the spending limit. One more. A Frisk may use up to $800 for incentives for activities. What is missing for this one? We have a dollar limit. What else is missing? What is missing?
Someone says no criteria.
Aha, there you go. That came up. I was looking, but it just now popped up. Thank you, Deetra and Molly. No criteria. So you might have criteria that say you could spend up to $800 for incentives, for Frisk-sponsored activities, for improvement in motivation behavior, or whatever kinds of activities that you might provide funding for those things. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, and some reminders for in terms of your bylaws. If I can find them, there we go. Reminders that you and your advisory council develop these together. And you will use your checklist to make sure you have everything you're supposed to have. And your advisory councils get reviewed by your regional program manager occasionally. So you do want to make sure you have everything in there that you need to have. And remember, it's for you. It's for your protection and backup. Remember to review regularly and update, and to use your bylaws. Not something that you just want to get done, put it on the shelf and not look at. They are your guide for things, and we depend on you following the guidelines in your bylaws, and so does your council, and so does your community. So you might want to have your advisory council bylaws with you at the meetings. If a spending issue comes up, you can easily check, well, what did we decide on that? So, all right, good job, everybody. Thank you for participating in our little quiz. So I think advisory council membership is what we're going to talk about next.
So I want to start out with my session with a confession as a new coordinator. My very first meeting was on 9/11, September 11th, 2001. So that meeting was not ever going to be forgotten in my brain. But a lot of my meetings probably were forgotten because I was really doing all the talking at my meetings. I wasn't allowing my advisory council members to share a lot or have a voice. I didn't educate them on what their overall role or purpose was. And I hadn't really surveyed to find out what they were good at or what they were interested in helping with as an advisory council member. Also, my meeting time, it was probably arranged more around my schedule versus theirs. So I didn't survey them to ask them what time fit their schedule best. And I really wasn't good at showing appreciation. So I'm just going to start out my section with that confession. And as I grew and as I evolved as a coordinator, I kind of picked up some of those things and became better with it. So I want to start out by talking a little bit about the advisory council membership. It is the foundation of all successful family resource and youth service centers, and choosing the right members is very, very beneficial. It's not, it can be, but it is very, very beneficial. So I'll take the next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity after we talk about this slide, but things to consider with your advisory council membership are community, parents, and staff or students. And those are all three parts of the advisory council that you're required to have as members. So with the community, it's important to reach out to businesses besides those agencies or organizations that you work with. With parents, think about the demographics in your school. Think beyond that cultural diversity. Think about who you serve. Think about those parents, maybe those relatives raising groups, those kind of things. And then your staff. Think beyond your school counselor. What about having your custodian or your school secretary serve on your council? Think about those things in general. So one of the things I want to talk about with community is picking that community partner that might be helpful, might be a win-win situation. You might want to have that bank person come in and do a budgeting class for you. One of the bank employees came in our school, and every Wednesday, students were allowed to bring their coins that they had saved up to the office where a bank employee was starting savings accounts for those students. So a lot of our parents in our school really, really, really didn't have savings accounts. So working with that bank employee as a member of our advisory council, he brought in really cool programs in. So we thought that was very successful. Also consider having someone on your advisory council from CPS. Now, I had a person on there. I didn't have them as a voting member, but I had them on there because they were a supervisor. So anytime I had a issue with a student, maybe a teacher had called in a student, a report on a student, a family, I actually was able to call Kathy and ask her about where that case was, who was working on it, what ongoing person was working with that. So that was so helpful. Like I said, they weren't a voting member, but they were on my council. I sent them minutes from my meetings every time we met, so they were up to date on what we were doing in our center, which was really good. Do I have any questions yet about what we've talked about? Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit. Let's look at the next slide, please. Membership requirements and ratios. There's 2 sheets in section 3 that I want you to kind of look at. One of them is that ratio sheet, and another one is tips on recruiting members. So use those. We typed up some suggestions on who to contact and trying to get those parents or community members or those staff members in or students, because oftentimes you have trouble recruiting those people. So just remember, with membership requirements and ratios, that a minimum of 1/3 parents or guardians need to be on your council, a maximum of 1/3 school staff. You need to have those community representatives. The YSCs and FRYSCs must include at least 2 students, and members who represent that socioeconomic, gender, ethnic, and cultural diversity of the community. So thinking about that, can you think of people in your school, just besides race, talking about cultural diversity? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Go ahead and say how you look at cultural diversity different in your school when you're looking for council members. Who are those people that you look at that you can grab hold on? Okay. Good. Special ed parents, absolutely. Thank you. We talked a little bit about relatives raising. Maybe you have a large number ESL parents. Absolutely. I was just going to mention that. So you guys have got that down pat. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, grandparent raising their grandchild. Yes, thank you. Okay, so as far as membership requirements and ratios, this is just some pointers to remember. If you have a parent that's on your advisory council and they get paid by your school district, even as a substitute, they would need to be considered a school representative. So if you have a parent that actually works at the school, they wouldn't need to be considered a parent representative. They would need to be considered a school representative. And sometimes people miss that when they're asking people to join their council. So if the center serves more than one school, it's strongly recommended that there be an equal number of members from each school. You wouldn't want it to be one school heavy with that. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. So officers, your bylaws let you know what officers that you're going to have on your council. A chairperson's required. So that person leads the meeting. The coordinator and the chairperson would need to meet before the actual advisory council meeting to talk a little bit about the agenda and what's going to be on the agenda. And that chairperson sets the tone for your meeting. So it's important to have that person really be someone that is kind of upbeat and really has a positive attitude when conducting business. So besides serving on the advisory council, the chairperson signs important documents. So we see that they serve the assurances or they sign the assurances pages. They sign off on the continuation program plan. They sign off on your request forms, and then the principal or YSC students should not serve as chair people of your AC. That's something to remember as well. I always had a person that served as a secretary on my council, because when the chairperson would talk about things and then they would pass the baton to me, it was sometimes hard for me to capture everything that was said and take notes. So if you can have a person that can take notes for you and serve as a secretary, I think it's really beneficial and handy. Okay, next slide. A little bit about voting. So the center coordinator and center staff should not be listed in the AC membership, so they are not considered voting members. So remember that. You're not considered in that list of voting members. Principals, school board members, maybe your district contact or district level staff, they are not listed as voting members either. So something important to remember whenever you're looking at those voting members. All right, next slide, please. So we're going to look at a sheet here. And first of all, if you want to refer to that ratio sheet in section 3 in your book, you can. It may help a little bit. But there are 2 incorrect things on this listing. Can you tell me what one of them would be? Absolutely. We already have one. It's just one youth. So that was one of the correct things. Can anybody tell me what the other one was?
Somebody says not enough parents.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You guys are so great at this. Okay. I hope you found that helpful. And so I think, just want to make sure that I just wanted to remind you that the recruiting tips are in that book. I said it before. So please refer to that if you have trouble recruiting parents or community or students or school staff. Okay, next person, that would be Mr. Will.
All right, I'm talking on mute, and I'm sorry that my video's not up. I'm having a lot of issues, and I would hate to get cut off in the middle of giving you such vital information. I hope everybody's still awake after lunch, because I know I had some guacamole that was pretty good, and I'm nodding a little bit, so hang in there. Hang in there. All right,
It's okay. Well, we love your profile picture every bit as much, so that's great.
Good deal. As long as I have the training specialist approval, we're good. We're good. All right, we're going to discuss meetings. You'll notice as we go through the slides, some of the things that are required, or if I have best practice, I just have a few captions beside those. And one is foundational quality for the requirements, and one is high quality for best practice. That's going to come a little further down the line when we talk about standards. So I don't want you so much to focus on it, but I just want you to kind of see those words and get used to hearing them used. Just with everything we do at Frisk, that's just a language we're really pushing, and we want you guys to incorporate it in how you speak and communicate and discuss everything you do for your center and your programming. So next slide. All right, frequency. Requirements for frequency are as follows. The number of meetings per year. Advisory council should meet a minimum of 5 times a year. The meeting months should take place a minimum of every other month. So you shouldn't go consecutive months without a meeting. And then summer meetings. Previously, we would have to meet in June and July. Attendance was really low. So the division, they got together and they decided, hey, we're going to give coordinators a break, and they don't require us to meet in June and July anymore. So we're going to slide down. We'll see that best practice. There's that word high quality again. I discussed that earlier. A high quality or best practice example is a coordinator who schedules the entire slate of their advisory council meetings at the beginning of the school year. If you present members with the dates in advance, it increases the likelihood of their continued attendance at your meeting. So that's what you strive for. You want all the voices in the room together so you can have those important discussions. All right. Cha-cha slide. All right. All right, this is our first activity. So this is going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to take you guys to jump in there. We're going to use the chat box. We're going to play a game called If Then When. I'm going to call out a month that a meeting takes place using the phrase if then when. You'll place the month in the chat box, that the next meeting would take place. So for an example, if I completed my last meeting in August, then when is my next meeting? What would you put in the chat box? You would put October. Good job. All right. So I'm going to say my if then when phrase, and then I'm going to count down from 3. And then I'm going to see how many people we can get to get that answer in the chat box. All right. So let me go. If I completed my last meeting in November, then when is my next meeting? I didn't get the countdown. See, yeah, false start. All right, it's like track. But it's great that you guys are ready, okay? Wait till I count down before you answer, okay? Give people a chance to think about it. All right, I'll give you one more. If I completed my last meeting in February, then when is my next meeting? 3, 2, 1. There we go. Had a couple of false starts, but the good thing is you guys understand the premise. So good job, guys. We'll go ahead and move on. Good job. All right, the next one we have, and I'm sorry about that reminder. Alexa had to tell my daughter to get dressed when she was on NTI because she would lay in the bed all day long. So I apologize for that. But and she's going to say it twice, so I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with you. You don't have to do anything special at 12 o'clock in your centers, I promise. All right, so preparation requirements, member advance notice. So your advisory council members are notified of the meeting dates and times in advance. Meeting documents. So agenda and corresponding documents are prepared for those who will attend. Let's see. Open Meetings Law, KRS-6180. So meetings are open to the public, and public notice of all meetings must be published as required by the Open Meeting Laws, KRS-6180. To fulfill this requirement, you simply need to advertise your meeting using some kind of local media outlet. For me, as a coordinator, I would use our local newspaper. That was one that really worked well. I know other people would use our radio station. That was a good way to get that information out. So it's just some kind of local media outlet. Let's see, a best practice for this is 2 weeks advance notice. So advisory council members are notified at least 2 weeks before the upcoming meeting, and that notification includes corresponding documents. Another example of a best practice is some sort of a handbook, and these are created to help members keep up with key information that they'll get, from each meeting as time goes on. Agenda. These are required things for your agenda. So your agenda is basically just your outline for the meeting, what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. And these things are required to have in your actual meeting. So we'll go minutes. That's just a summary of your previous meeting. Your budget is a description of the funds that are allocated to your center, and then your plans on how you're going to spend it. And then even discussing how you've already spent some of those funds that they may have approved previously. At your continuation program plan update. And when I say that, basically what I'm saying is you're going to discuss what programming you've completed. And then also, any future ideas, what programs are coming up, you'll cover those things as well with your advisory council. We have standards on here. You guys are not certified in standards. And so while that's very important right now, that's something that you kind of get a chance to push to the side. But we just wanted to put that on there because once you are certified, that's something that we really need to see in that agenda to know that you're discussing that with your advisory council and just getting their feedback on the standards and ways that you can, make your center more effective and ways to diversify your program and how to include, different things that make your program and your center run better. Let's see, approval and review. So budget amendments, requests for approval, your CPP checklist, impact reports, needs assessments, bylaws, budgets for the upcoming fiscal year. These are all examples of items you'll either have to review or get approved by your advisory council. A best practice idea when you're creating your agenda isn't to include discussion starters. So these are just anything that encourages your members to discuss different things about how we can enhance the center, how you can provide additional programming, thoughts, ideas, situations that may need to be addressed. These are all positive things you can just plug in there to kind of get them to talk a little bit as well. Next slide. All right. This high quality agenda example is one of your handouts. I think it's maybe the 5th one in that section 3, those first set of handouts that you get. I'd like to just quickly highlight a few things. If you'll notice, right after the welcome and call to order, you'll see the minutes are discussed there. Right under that, you have services and program report. So that's that CPP program. They've just named it something a little bit different, but as you'll see as you go through, they're discussing programming, they're discussing what they're doing, what's happened. Then you'll notice the budget. Their budget is discussed. An amendment is discussed as well. I think there may be like a standard letter in there. And then if you'll notice on the B side of the slide, you see some upcoming programs and ideas. That right there is a good discussion starter. And then other business or announcements from the center, school agencies. That's also a really good discussion starter example as well. All right, we can switch slides. All right, activity number 2, what's missing? So what I'll do is I'm going to show you guys a couple of mock agendas. Then I'll just ask you which, required agenda item is missing, and you will answer using the chat box. So I want to kind of run it the same way. If we could just wait a couple of seconds before we respond, just to give people time to kind of think about it. But we'll go ahead and go to the next slide with those mock agendas on there. Good luck. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, so this is agenda 1. It's on the left side of the slide, or the A side is what I call it. So I'll read them off. You have your welcome, you have your budget, CPP update or your programs, standards of quality, open discussion, and adjournments. So I'm gonna give you about 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and put in the chat what you think is missing. Oh, look at Nicole. She was quick on the draw. Okay, minutes. Okay, all right. I would like to say I'm a great teacher, but I think you guys just really get it. So we're gonna go ahead and slide to agenda 2. Good work. All right, I'll go through and read them first, and then while I'm reading them, just think about it. Then we'll count you down, and you can go on and get in the chat box. So we got the welcome, September minutes, budget amendment, old business, volunteer events, evaluation standards of quality review, new business, group discussion, then adjourn. So I'm gonna count you down. 3, 2, 1, 0. What's missing? Can you tell me what is missing under agenda number 2? Let's see. Wow, nobody. Did I go out? Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Good deal. Okay. CPP update. All right, and that's your continuation program plan. That's what that CPP stands for. So good job. All right, we'll go on to the next thing. Good job, guys. Glad I didn't put you to sleep. All right, minutes. Now, once you've completed your meeting, it is important to complete the required documentation. Funny thing we used to say all the time, if you don't document it, it did not happen. You have zero proof that it went on. So here just are examples of the requirements for your minutes. So the date of the meeting, we have to know when it took place, record of attendance. So who was there? Beginning and ending times. How long was that meeting? When did it start? When did it end? Summary of all discussions concerning agenda items from the meeting. So, and this as a coordinator is important, because a lot of times when you're in a meeting and you're doing a lot of the talking, and you're doing having some of the facilitating duties, you can miss things sometimes. So going back and being able to look at these things, or if you're doing your own minutes, just thinking back on things that happened helps you kind of remember who said what and who to contact later about things that were brought up in your advisory council meeting. Records of items in which you voted. So those things that need approval, those votes are in there. And then a record of those approvals and items reviewed when required. So we'll go to the next slide. All right, and here is another example as well. This is another one that's part of your examples in the front of your section 3. I think this one may be the 6th page. I just want to highlight a few things. You'll notice that the date is there. Also, with the time that the meeting began, you'll see under present that kind of tells you who attended this meeting. You'll see a vote as far as over the minutes. And then those large paragraphs are just those summaries or those descriptions of, all the different items that they covered that were on the agenda. So, and then you'll notice at the very bottom, you'll see, when the meeting ended around 1:00. So that just gives you guys kind of an example. Just as a rule of thumb, if you're doing your minutes or you have a new secretary, it's good to kind of pull out these examples and, kind of check, make sure, you've got everything in there that you need in order to, meet compliance when it comes to the minutes. So cha-cha slide. Turn it down. All right, approvals and reviews. This current slide is also part of the handouts. See, I went a little handout crazy and I apologize. I think it's the 7th handout in section 3. And these are items that either need approval or something that needs to be reviewed by your advisory council. So I'll roll through those really quick. So examples of items requiring approval: your annual budget, budget amendments, purchase requests, bylaw changes, continuation program plan, center operation amendments, site changes, action component changes. Those are all examples of things that your advisory council would have to approve. Items that are reviewed by your advisory council: bylaws biannually, so every other year. Implementation report, that's at the end of your year, kind of beginning of the next year. Your impact report, it's in that same time frame. Needs assessment data, so when you write your CPP, that needs assessment piece is what drives that CPP. So we want to include them in that so they can see, what data we're using to formulate and make these programs. And then your action program evaluation. When we were in the group, we all kind of said this was something that, we not always did the best at. So evaluating your programming is very, very important. You need to know if it's effective, how you're reaching people, and if, you're meeting those desired outcomes. So, all right. Slide. All right. So once your meeting has concluded and minutes are completed, it's important to keep accurate minutes on file at the Center for Public Inspection. And then any approvals that you have, they should be forwarded to your district contact and RPM for further approval. Best practice here is when you complete those advisory council minutes, upload them to Frisk Counts. That way everybody can see when you had your meetings, what you're talking about, how that information is shared, the impact that you're making on that group, and how they're affecting your center in a positive way. Also, for the sake of stakeholders, just give them updates. Send minutes of the council meetings to your principal, your SBDM, your district Frisk supervisor, or your district contact, and school board members. Let people know what's going on in your center. Let people know what programs you have going on and how your council is impacting that program. And last but not least, next, there we go. And then we're going to review really quick. Your meeting should take place a minimum of 5 times a year, and that's every other month at a minimum. You can have meetings back to back. So if you wanted to do one in August and September, you could, but you can only skip 1 month. So if you did an August and a September, you could skip October, but that next meeting has to be in November. All right, meetings are open to the public, and public notice of all meetings must be published as required by the Open Meetings Law, KRS-6180. So just make sure you give some kind of notice that, everyone's welcome to be a part of that meeting, and, that it's open to the public. Council should keep accurate meeting agendas and minutes. So when we say that, I'm just saying all the things that we mentioned here that are requirements, make sure those things are included in your agenda, and make sure your documentation as far as your minutes, make sure the things that we highlighted today are included in those minutes. It is recommended that a parent member serve as chairperson. We know who should not serve as chairperson, and that's your principal. So we would really love for it to be a parent. That's not always the case, but we would love, love, love for it to be a parent, but we know it should never, 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 ever, ever, ever be your principal. All right. The chairperson helps prepare the agenda, facilitates the meeting, and signs approvals once they receive a majority approval vote from the advisory council. So the beauty of you guys being new, if your chairperson hasn't done, helped with the agenda, hasn't facilitated the meetings, you come in, you're new, you're saying, hey, this is the expectation that's been presented to me, and I want to extend that expectation. I want this to be a highly functioning advisory council. You're excited, you're new, and hey, bam, you can just drop that in their lap, and hopefully they take it and run with it. And if not, it's a good time to maybe, find a new chairperson, somebody else who may be interested in taking on those duties or helping you out to make your advisory council perform effectively. So, and that is all that I have, guys.
Okay, so we have a second poll. We could go ahead and throw that up, right, guys?
I got it.
Okay.
Here you go.
So take some time and fill out the second poll so we can kind of gauge our effectiveness of the training.
And there are 4 questions, so please make sure you answer all 4. We've got 10 people already done. Oh, here they come. And there's 20. And there's 30. We're almost there. We're 2/3 of the way there. If then when? All right, I have 32 of 46 respondents. So if you haven't had a chance, please go ahead and wrap that up. If it's hiding, it's possible that the poll's behind your main screen. And group, I'll let me know when you want me to end it. We seem to have petered out. I've got 34 responses of 46 right now. We're up to 73%.
I think we can end it.
Sounds good. I'll give somebody 10 more seconds to finish that last question. All right, there we go.
All right, let's see if we made an improvement. Yeah. So good understanding, 82%. Gotta scroll on down. Good understanding of advisory council bylaws, 76%. The requirements.
And one person that could write the perfect set of bylaws.
Yeah. So that looks great. Great. Just in closing, I just want to remind you that if you would like a copy of that PowerPoint to just let your RPM know, or maybe Greg know, and we can send that to you. There was a lot of really good information in there, and we're sorry it wasn't in there. We just didn't have it ready. So we would be glad to send that to you. Anything else, team, before they move on to the next session? Sherrie, you're muted.
My lips move, but nothing comes up. I would say we have an activity we want to do.
Oh, okay.
So next slide, please.
Oh, right.
Okay. So we will be dividing you into groups randomly. So you won't be divided into center type. And so when you get into your group, You will choose a recorder and a reporter right off the bat. I also suggest when you get in your group, just introduce yourselves very quickly. So each group will be given a question. A couple of, there'll be two to three groups that will have the same question, but there are three different questions. So a couple of groups will get question A, a couple of groups will get question B, and a couple of groups will get question C. So we're going to take about 20 minutes for you, or 15 to 20 minutes for you to brainstorm and generate some ideas for these items. And then we'll come back and get you all to share what you came up with. So.
Okay, and so we have 6 breakout groups. Each of them is going to be named room 1 through 6, but room 1 and 2 are both going to be scenario A. Room 3 and 4 are both, and it actually says this in the names, are going to be scenario B, referring to the slide, and groups 5 and 6, you're going to be scenario C. Okay, the slide won't carry into the breakout, so make sure you know which of the issues you're addressing in your breakout group. All right, anything else, or are you ready for me to send them away?
Can we put those in chat, the scenarios, so they will be able to access them? I can do that.
Will. Yep, that's a great idea. Thank you, Melissa.
Uh-huh.
All right, here you go, everybody. All right, so the breakout groups are closing in 5 seconds.
Naila, that's a beautiful background.
I love it. Need to find a spring one.
I thought I cut myself off. That's why I was like, but thank you. That's one of my pictures. It was on my phone, so it let me.
Welcome back, everyone, from breakouts. And group, take it away.
Okay. So somebody from group 1 or 2 share what kinds of things you came up with for how can you get your members to have good attendance at your advisory council meetings? Will someone please share?
Well, what I did when I first came in, everything right now is actually virtual. So it makes it a little bit harder because we can't have people in the school. But the first thing that some of the staff asked me was, what kind of food you going to have? So, it's like I said, have something fun or good for them to eat, either breakfast or lunch or whatever time it is. Mm-hmm. Another thing was having your agendas, to them early so they know exactly when it is, what time it is, make preparations, things along that line. Plus, people kind of want to know ahead of time what's going to be discussed, and if it pertains to them or their kids, a lot of times. And another thing, I don't know if this is allowed or not, but maybe we could pull one of our kids, somebody that's involved in the family resource itself, an older child, like a high school or middle schooler, come over and maybe do an activity with the kids so they'll have child care. So they can't say that they have kids and they don't have anybody to watch them. So they could just take them, if it's in the library, have it in another part of the library, have them, a video to watch or color sheets or something like that, blocks or little small activities that they could do to watch the kids as their parents can be involved in that.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Julie, were you 1 or 2?
1.
Anybody from group 2 when you shared, did you have something different than what that Julie shared from their group, from group 1?
We pretty much said similar things. Another thing we talked about was maybe if you started the agenda or your email to your team members that with a big ticket item, like I really need everyone to come because, whether it's we're voting on something that's super duper important, or we really need to discuss this new innovative program that we want to try to do, but always try to have the big ticket thing that would draw them in rather than thinking it's just a meeting to meet because we have to meet. We thought that might pull them in.
Yeah, you're making them feel important. Yeah. And people want to participate when they feel important and when they feel needed. Exactly. Thank you. Anything else?
Also, we discussed in group 1, just say if your community is not real big, and if you're doing a virtual meeting, you could deliver the food to your council members, you know. So that's what we discussed that as well. And I say for is like Chick-fil-A, they have those little boxes of food where you don't have to touch anything. And it's in a box. You can deliver it to your council if you're not a big community where you have to travel. You don't have to travel so far. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. And remember, if you are going to spend funds for food for your advisory council meetings, it's okay on our side as long as it's minimal. Because we want to make sure that our stakeholders know that our money is going for the kids. But advisory council members are important volunteers, and they are giving up time and a lot of things to help us. So we can spend a little bit, you know, to feed them, but that's something that will go in your bylaws as well under your food category. Gotta sneak that in. Okay. So can we have next slide here? Some other things that we had thought of over the years. We've collected ideas for how to get your members to attend. Almost all councils have that member or members who just consistently don't show up. So if that's happening, it's time to remove them diplomatically. You could change your meeting dates. Maybe that particular date is not working for people. Let's say you have it on the second Monday of every other month. You could poll your members and see if there's a different day. Change meeting times. After school's not working, see if lunchtime will work, or even before school times. Change your meeting location. Serve food. Region 1 came up with that idea. And to survey members, what would help them? What are barriers to them not coming? What would help them get there? Okay, thank you. So our next, can we go back a slide? Back to, there we go. Group 3 and 4. What did you all come up with for how to get your advisory council members to be more active? Someone from group 3.
Let's see here.
We have a reporter for group 3. How do you get your advisory council members to be more active?
Our group did this section, and I'm not sure which group number we are, if we're 3 or 4. But we talked about sending out or getting them invested, the members invested. And one thing that we talked about was sending out a Google form survey for the advisory council members, especially being a new coordinator, to find out what their expectations of the council are and things that they like that the council has done, and then times getting them to attend the meetings to learn more about what we're doing. So also in that survey, looking at the times that work for them overall. And then I actually shared with a few people in the group, a Google form that I had put together and sent out to my advisory council members. And it seemed to have a good impact or good response from my members whenever I sent that out.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
All right. And you guys were actually group 4. So group 3 was Abby, Brenda, Jamie, Kendra, Nicole, and Shinzetta. Can one of you report out from your group?
Okay, I will. We had one of the things you listed for the last one was to send out a survey to the staff and teachers. and ask them also, like the parents that are involved, to make the times convenient and let the committee choose those times. And then get the parents that ask you the most questions or that are always contacting you, because those will be parents that most likely want to be involved.
That's really good. It's good to keep aware of those parents and note in your head. Those might make good future advisory council members that are active. Thank you. All right. And the next slide, please. Here's some things that we thought of. So I loved Betty's opening story about herself and how her advisory council meetings went on her very first one. And I have to say that when I was a coordinator, I had a lot of meetings like that where I was the only one talking. And the other, the members were not sharing or talking or discussing. They would just nod their heads. And even if I would ask them for their input, they would just say, oh, whatever you want. So my goal is to try and get them to participate more in meetings. So everybody else said, surveying members, always good. Providing training, that came up too. I think someone mentioned that. Providing training so that they truly know what the center does and why you need them to be on the council. If you have a chairperson that's very active, that always helps to get the other members to be more active and talk more and participate more in the meetings. Some members, I would say the parent members, may feel intimidated because the other people in the room are school staff or community members that are professionals. They might have professional looking name tags and the parents don't. So if everybody had the same name tag, that might help level the playing field a little bit. Engaging them and involving them. And I think it was Julie that said first about getting the members invested into your center, into your council, to make them feel important and assign them tasks, little tasks that they can do. You could bring some things that are busy work that you would be doing at your center, like tallying surveys or cutting things out for your early childhood parent-child meeting. You could bring that and maybe have advisory councils help do that during your meeting, just to get them engaged and working with you. And then demonstrating appreciation for them. Get them together in a group picture, put it in the paper. Anything that you can do to help them feel important and engaged. So we have one more, and then we will end because we're running just a couple minutes over. So group 5 or 6, what did you come up with as characteristics of an effective advisory council?
I was in part of group 5, and we talked about just staying, having fresh ideas, not being stale in our programming, having a positive chairperson who's enthusiastic and kind of keeps things rolling, having good feedback, and just letting the members know that their thoughts are and their ideas are valid and are appreciated.
Very good, thank you. Group 6, did you have anything different? Or something that Danita did not mention from her group?
Excuse me, I'm from group 6. Some of the different things that we talked about was the diversity within the advisory council, scheduling, making sure that the schedule of all participants is conducive for everyone, so we can have attendance at the meetings where everyone would have a voice to be able to share out or discuss things that's going on, as well as the importance of the students that are chosen to be on there.
Yes.
The students' voices are more importantly these days than ever before. So I think the students being a part of that council and being able to not be intimidated to speak out and share out about not only from their point of view, but maybe from their peer perception as well.
Yes, exactly. All good ideas. Thank you. So the last slide, here's some of our thoughts too, that and mirror yours, that your dream council, your perfect council, not perfect, but a highly effective council would be diverse, truly representing the school community. You just heard that. They would advocate for your center outside of meetings. Members who participate in meetings are engaged and vocal. All voices are heard. We just heard that. And this is something we don't think about a lot, but members give honest feedback. They're not just a rubber stamp council where you say you want to, coordinator says they want to do this and they go, okay. But, you know, we really get some differences in opinions and a good discussion going. Members value the center and have ownership of the program. That goes back to helping them get invested into it. And members will bring resources to the table. Perhaps they have, they're active in their church Sunday school group and their Sunday school class wants to take on a project. They could bring they might bring a resource to you that way. And members assist the center with events and programs when they can. So there's some other ideas of a strong, effective advisory council to work towards. And you all can do that. You all can nurture those characteristics in your advisory council. So you have some good handout resources in your new coordinator's orientation binder. Let's see, we have a chat, and that's, I see, oh, Julie says we have a church group that does our snack program every other week. And that is nice. That is very nice. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your ideas with each other and with the whole group. You really have some good thoughts and great ideas, and I know you'll have good, strong councils. So that's it for us. If anybody else has anything to say or add.
I just wanted to let folks know I will get this PowerPoint uploaded into the Advisory Council Basics classroom in the Google Classroom, and I'll also put it on the Training Hub. You can also ask to have a copy sent to you, but I wanted to let you know that it will be available in those two places as well.
That's great. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so a little bit of logistics. We have next up, we have record keeping, but we have a 15-minute break after record keeping, and we're a little bit behind. So what I would like to do is steal the 5 minutes from the break and give everybody just a really super quick, like 5-minute run to the restroom and come right back. And then we will resume with record keeping with Teresa Combs, Russell, and Tanya.